Alright, what's going on, guys? Welcome to Blake's Garage. So today I'm here with Kevin. We are going to be installing a downpipe Cobb Stage 2 install on his 2014 Subaru sedan, right?
Yeah.
You have, what exhaust do you have on here right now?
I just have a Cobb Catback.
So he's got the Cobb Catback on there, so we're going to unbolt that, and you guys will get a good idea of how this car sounds kind of before and after. So that'll be kind of cool. So I like to use a pair of lineman pliers just because these work pretty good. You can use any sort of pliers just to clamp this down, but these have a nice wide grip. So go ahead and grab that, pull the hose back, and that will pull right off. Then you can take this vacuum line, pull that right off. This little hose here that goes to the brake booster, you're going to just want to take that out of this clip right here. So we'll remove that. Then you're going to want to go ahead and grab your 12mm socket wrench, and we can start taking off these bolts. Alright guys, so I just have my 12mm socket. This is a deep socket, but you're not going to need one for this application. I have it on a little DeWalt impact driver just because I know that speeds up the process pretty well. But you're going to want to go on these two bolts right here. They're kind of hot, squeeze the side. They are coming out of the turbo, so wearing gloves is not a bad idea when you're going to be doing this. I do have some TIG welding gloves. I'd recommend using some of those. If you don't have any, any sort of glove will work good, but that's going to be a good idea since we're working on hot exhaust here. You can easily burn yourself. Okay, so we have one more bolt up here and then two off the intake manifold, so we'll undo those. These bolts are going to be shorter than the one on top. So just remember that for when you're putting them back in. These bolts are shorter. And now you can go ahead and pull out the bracketry that you need to do to remove the intercooler. So using a flathead screwdriver, you want to go to the intercooler to throttle body, intercooler to throttle body hose. There should be a little worm gear screw on there that you can go ahead and put your screwdriver on. Just loosen that up until it feels pretty loose. It might wiggle around a little bit, give it a little hit. Now you know it's off. Then from there, you can just wiggle the intercooler a couple times. Boom, and the intercooler pulls right off. Okay guys, so while you have your intercooler out, this is one of the biggest problems on these Subaru WRXs 08 through 2014. If you haven't noticed already, or hear any sort of squealing noises or just high-pitched turbo whine noises, that could be coming from this area. A lot of the time this hose blows off because it's actually a three-piece design. This is my old throttle body to intercooler hose, and this is what I'm talking about, guys. So this is actually a two-piece system to where this slides on like this. What ends up happening is you get boost leaks between this area. A lot of time this will actually look folded back, where you'll actually see it like this. Or you might have a leak, you might have a bad worm gear, and that's going to cause, a lot of time you'll see oil from shooting just blow by. You could get a lot of oil in there, so that's why people put on air oil separators. I do not have one on my car, but it's always a good idea to do that. I would highly recommend it. But this little area, if you see oil in here, you know that something's leaking out. So definitely check that while you're under there. If you do notice an issue, a good idea would be to get a aftermarket hose. This is the stock downpipe on the car. This is actually from my car. This isn't from Kevin's. But I just want to show you where these bolts are real quick for the stock location heat shield. So you have one here. You have one on the side over here. Have two on this side right here. Then if you look on the other side, you're going to have two on the top, one here and one here. And underneath this, there's actually going to be some bracketry that bolts up as well. So you'll want to check that out too. But hopefully that gives you guys kind of a good overview of where this stuff's at. Here are the bell mounts on the turbo mount. So there's the stock one there. You can tell that it's really restricted. It's probably a 2.25. I don't think that's 2.5. Yeah, it looks like it's about 2.25 diameter pipe. And then there is the Cobb one, where you can tell that it uses pretty much the whole bell mouth of the turbo, and then that goes down to 3-inch on the pipe. Now that does taper to a 2.5-inch flange on the bottom. So where it actually comes out, you'll see that it goes from 3" to 2.5". So if you did want to run a full 3" exhaust out, you would have to get that cut and welded up. All right guys, so we're gonna go ahead and take the heat shield off. So it does still have the stock heat shield on, but we only have like 3 or 4 bolts in it right now. So it's gonna be a lot easier because we tried to get this off one day, but we were having a little bit of issues with the bolts on the turbo to the downpipe. So we're gonna hit those with PV Blaster in a minute, but let me show you where these bolts are. I'm just gonna go ahead and pop one of these off real quick. Wearing gloves is a good idea, like I said before. It's pretty hot. Okay, so we're just getting a couple more of these bolts off. We'll get them out of there really quick, and then we can check out the downpipe. Okay, so we got all those bolts undone, so we're gonna go ahead and just pull this heat shield out. So let's pull that right out from the top. So you can see, again guys, these are where the bolt locations are. You got them here, 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 and then 3 here on the sides. So make sure to get all those out. Alright guys, so we're gonna spray the downpipe bolts to the turbo housing with a little bit of PV Blaster. You can use WD-40 or any kind of penetrating oil. I know this stuff just works really, really well, but it also smells really, really good too. So don't inhale this stuff because it's pretty gnarly. But we're gonna go ahead and set that on there, spray it on, and that should help penetrate these bolts a little bit to get them broken off a little bit easier. Okay guys, so using a 14mm box end wrench, we're gonna go ahead and loosen up these bolts. You might want a socket too as well. We're gonna try to see what works the best. But anyways, we're gonna get close into the inside of the turbo area onto this nut real quick. See if we can't break this bolt loose. I've already kind of cranked on it a little bit. This is the one that was giving us trouble the other day, so highly possible it could snap off on us too. Since this is a nut and bolt, not a bad idea to bust out the wrench and do it in both directions, since it's going to spin on both sides, and hopefully we can get it off. Now I do feel it binding up quite a bit, so this might shear. We will see. We did buy an extra bolt for this situation. Alright guys, so using the heat method, I'm just using a MAP gas torch. I'm gonna put a little bit of heat into this bolt to see if we can't get it to break loose. So this is just a technique to break stubborn bolts. Okay, so we got that nice and hot. Let's see what can happen here. See if we can't get this busted off. No, it's not really making it much better. Yep, not too much better. Alright guys, so after putting a ton of heat in with the MAP gas torch, finally got the bolt to shear off. Now it was kind of weird because the bolt, it was actually loose, but it only went like halfway. Maybe we had about this much gap, and then it finally sheared off, so that was nice. So now we can move on to the next bolt. Alright guys, so we're going to head on to the next bolt. So this one, the wastegate is kind of in the way, so you got to make sure you position it correctly, but you can get basically just 2 wrenches on there and break that loose. I already broke that loose a little bit earlier, but penetrating oil helps a ton. Look at that one. Nice and easy, the way it should be. But definitely, if you're going to do this install, I would recommend at least buying 1 bolt and nut, if not more. You know, you can always probably return them, or next time your buddy does one, bring it over just in case, just to be a nice guy and say, hey, I got one of those bolts. So, alright, we'll move on to the next bolt. Alright guys, so we got all the turbo bolts broken off, so we've taken all those off now. 1 bolt was a pain in the ass. Like I said before, we had to use heat on that, and then it finally sheared. But the other bolts were very easy. Kind of the setup that I ended up using, this is what I used to break the back bolts loose with. 2 of the studded ones on the back side, it was really easy with just a little socket, and then I had kind of a bigger breaker bar / torque wrench and a 14mm on there. That allowed me to get behind the AC line and get torque on it like this. And also add a little bit of a swivel head. So that was easy. That made it a lot easier. So I did that on both bolts. Then for the other 2 bolts, we basically just used just wrenches on each side and got it loose. Now, when I needed a little bit more torque, I just put a pipe over one of the wrenches just to act as a breaker bar, slid it over, that way I could get a little bit more torque. So that might be a good idea for you guys to use. If all else fails, use heat and a lot of PV blaster. Alright guys, so we got 2 bolts on the Catback exhaust here. They're just spring bolts. They use a 14mm. So I'm just going to go ahead and break those off real quick. Then we are going to undo the O2 sensor that has a quick disconnect. And we'll pull the oxygen sensor out and we'll switch over the oxygen sensor and get this new downpipe in. Okay guys, so the last 2 bolts you have on the downpipe are right here. So you have this one that clicks on, and then you also have this little area right up here where I have the wrench. So you're going to want to go ahead and take that bracket off up here first, and then you'll take that bolt off. Also the oxygen sensor is right here. You just put a little screwdriver, a flathead screwdriver in on the one end, and that will pop this apart. Where the other half went, but anyways, that'll pop it apart right there, and then you'll be able to pop this all off. Alright guys, so I got all the bolts taken off, so we're gonna go ahead and just kind of finagle this thing out of here. Make sure you get the oxygen sensor out of the way first, because that's gonna hang you up. But if you have your car pretty high off the ground, should be pretty dang easy to get out of there. Just take it out, rotate down. You should just be able to throw it out the side of your car. Alright guys, so we're going to go ahead and take off the O2 sensor. So I have an O2 socket wrench. This isn't quite the right size. This is, what size is this? This is a 7/8 and 22mm. I think this is a little, it might be the right size. But if you don't have the right size one of these, once you get it off, you should actually be able to use a wrench as well. You just want to be careful that you don't damage the oxygen sensor, but since I do have the proper tool, we'll go ahead and try to break it off here. Sometimes these can be kind of tight, so position yourself to where you can get some good torque. Oh yeah, came off nice and easy. So after we get this off, we're going to want to go ahead and install some anti-seize on this. So right here, only on the threads, are we going to want to put the anti-seize on, and we'll put that in the new downpipe. Alright guys, so grab your tube of anti-seize again. You just want to go ahead and open that up. This is the copper stuff, so I'm just going to apply it right on the threads. Just get your finger out, get your finger a little dirty, and go ahead and apply that on here. Now that's going to make sure that the next time you have to replace your downpipe, that you're going to be able to, so you shouldn't have any issues. Make sure none of that goes on the sensor area or anything like that, and just thread that right into the O2 bung hole. That's right, it's the bung hole. Alright, then go ahead and grab your socket, get it back on there, and snug that down fairly tight. Doesn't need to be torqued on super hard, but take your downpipe and go ahead and guide it up to the turbo. Get it installed on the studs. There you go. Now with the mount underneath the car, you should just be able to push up a little bit and just give it a quick tap, and it'll click right onto the bracket. Alright guys, so go ahead and grab your donut gasket. Put that on the back of the downpipe. You may have to unclick the downpipe for just a second. You can get that put in. Possibly you might push back on the Catback. Kind of put that on there, push back, and then should be able to get it on. Now we're going to go ahead and install the springs for the Catback system, the little spring bolts. Now also, while we're down here, the most important thing is going to be the oxygen sensor. So we want to go ahead and just reroute that back the way it was previously and click that into the O2 port. and that is one-way directional, so it is only going to snap in one direction, so you should be good. Go ahead and install the bolt down here and the bolt up there. Actually, you want to put on the bell mouth first before you bolt down any of this stuff. So we're going to go up top, we're going to put on the heat shield, and we're also going to put all those turbo bolts to the downpipe. Ready? Mm-hmm. Alright guys, so we're just going to put some anti-seize on the turbo downpipe bolts real quick. So this is just good to get all over the threads on here. I mean, I'm probably using a little bit too much, but these can be a real pain in the butt or to get off again after the fact. So I would definitely recommend loading these up. Now you will smell a little bit of it, like an anti-seize odor when you're running your car, just because this stuff's gonna get hot and it's eventually just kind of burn off, but it'll smell like it for about a week or whatnot. You know, mostly we're using it over here, but I just kind of wanted to get it on there pretty well since that other bolt was such a pain to take off earlier. But yeah, we'll get this stuff on here. So we're gonna put on the heat shield mount too. So this is the mount that you're gonna want to reuse. That just goes on the back side here. You're gonna put the bolt through. So let's put that through real quick, and then we'll go ahead and install the nut finger tight, and then we can torque this down and do the same thing for the other bolt as well. So we're gonna go ahead and install the heat shield now. This is a Grim Speed heat shield. So this is pretty straightforward. You have two bolts here, and then you have another spot for the bolt at the bottom. Now that one you can tell has a little bit of adjustment back and forth, but this is the way you're going to install it. This little cutout here is for your wastegate controller. So you can just put that on there. It'll just kind of sit down, and then you grab your little bolts, and we'll install this on here. And just hand thread those in there. Get all of them hand threaded before you torque them down, and then make sure you don't drop your screw. Alright guys, so there is the Grim Speed heat shield installed. So that takes one bolt down there in the bottom area on that bracket, and like I showed you guys before, right here is one bolt, and then there's another bolt around the corner over there. So that is how that bolts up to the original flange. Alright guys, so we have everything bolted up as far as the downpipe goes. All those bolts are on there tight. Nothing's making any vibration noise or anything like that. So now we're going to go ahead and reinstall the intercooler onto the car. We'll start out just like we were when we took it off. We'll just do it in reverse order. We're just going to press down and get it into the throttle body to intercooler hose. Now, a good idea, I didn't have any with me, but some hairspray in between this is sometimes a good idea, just to get a nice tight seal, just so you don't have any boost leaks down the line. But just kind of rock it on there until you see it make firm contact with the intercooler itself. So you want to see this hose nice and tight on there. Push it in. Should mount up good. That looks good. And now we can go ahead and tighten down that screw. I like to do that first, that way I know I have a good connection on there, and then I can tighten down everything else. Alright, so tighten up that worm gear hose clamp on there. You want to get it tight, but don't over tighten it, as these have a tendency to strip out, but you definitely do want it tight. You can buy a different style hose clamp if you do have issues with these. Some of the different style ones are a little bit better. That looks like it is tight on there. Looks like we have a good connection. I'm looking around it, making sure we're nice and firm. Alright, now we will go ahead and reinstall this bracketry. Okay guys, so the first thing you're going to want to do is go ahead and put this bracket back on. Take the two bolts and you want to slide this under. They are the smaller bolts out of the three. I want to remember it's not the long one. That one goes in the back. So we'll go ahead and just kind of slide this underneath here. This goes like that. This hose goes underneath. And then we can just hand tighten these onto the intake manifold. And just put it back in its original spot. Makes it a little bit easier to play around with. And then you want to drop the bolt into the engine. because that's the idea. Now that you've got that bolt out of the top of the motor, because you dropped it, try not to drop it, but anyways, we're going to go ahead and finger tighten these up so that basically nothing is, you know, fully fastened down. We just kind of want it loose. That way we can make sure that we get everything bolted up, since this does have a little bit of flexibility in the way that it mounts. So now take that back bolt. You're going to want to put that into this top mount of the intercooler. Fasten that down. Now again, just put these in just with your fingers, because you do not want to strip this area out. That is your turbo, and you will be buying, most likely buying a new turbo if you do that. You know, you could always drill it out and just do through bolts, but let's try not to do that. So anyways, those are on. Now we can just go ahead and torque all these bolts down to factory spec. Nope. All right, once you have the intercooler bolted down, go ahead and take the bypass valve hose, get it over the bypass valve to where you have the hose basically lined up. And then you can take your pliers again. You want to open, well, let's just do it like this. Just open those pliers up nice and wide. We'll chomp down on that and get it back on there. Make sure that you do have a nice tight fitting. Put it in the original spot that you had it. Boom. You're all good. Click this hose back into its original place and then install this vacuum line again. All right. Make sure everything is bolted down firmly and tightly and that you don't have any boost leaks. You're all good to go. Now you can remap your car with a flash from the Cobb Accessport. All right, guys, so now we're gonna flash the map onto the car. So go ahead and plug in your Accessport, take your key, turn it into the on position, and don't start the car. Then you wanna hit the back arrow key here one time, then we'll scroll down to tune. Now we're just gonna be installing the Cobb Accessport off-the-shelf stage 2. So we're gonna go down to change map, hit enter. After we do that, we're going to go to reflash. Alright, so you're going to want to scroll down until you reach the desired map that you're looking for. So I found Stage 2, SF Plus, ACN, Arizona, California, Nevada, 91, manual transmission, V331. So that's Stage 2 map. I'm going to go ahead and hit enter on that. Now, you want to make sure that you do have a fully charged battery when you do this. And this reflash should take around, probably around a minute or so. So we'll just wait for this to go. Alright, so after it's done that, you want to go ahead and cycle the key off to the off position. When you do this, you'll probably hear some clicks out of your glove box. I like to listen until I kind of hear that happen. And then I hit the enter button to continue. After that, I like to go ahead and just kind of start the car into the halfway on position. And I usually like to cycle it off one more time, just because sometimes you'll have a hesitation on your first initial startup. All right, Kevin, you want to give her the first rip? All right, the initial startup, here it goes. All right. So normally at this point, I like to just let the car idle and kind of just figure out the tune for a little bit. Let the car re-warm up to operating temperatures, and then we can go take it for a cruise.